Imagine a map of 14th century Europe. Between 1347 and 1351, a dark tide swept from the ports of the Mediterranean to the frozen edges of Scandinavia. In less than 5 years, nearly half of the continent's population, an estimated 200 million people, simply vanished. It wasn't just a plague. It was a total biological purge. In cities like London and Florence, the silence was absolute, broken only by the wind through empty cathedrals and the occasional rattle of a death cart. History usually focuses on the mass graves and the tragedy of those who died. But today we are looking at the anomalies, the survivors, those who looked the Black Death in the face and didn't blink. For over 600 years, historians wondered if these people were just lucky or if they were biologically different. New DNA evidence from medieval skeletons suggests it was the latter. The survivors passed something down to us. If you are alive today with European ancestry, you are the direct descendant of a super survivor. But that survival came with a hidden cost, a genetic trade-off that might be affecting your health at this very moment. We often imagine the survivors as those who fled to the countryside or hid behind castle walls, but rare records from villages like Warboys in eastern England reveal a more complex story. Historical documents show 22 tenants who fell ill during the summer of 1349, likely with the plague, but remarkably returned to their labor services in just 3 or 4 weeks. These peasants didn't have physicians or medicine. They had resilience. They lay on straw beds, racked by fevers and painful, swollen buboes, yet their bodies fought back. Bioarchaeologists studying skeletal samples from London's medieval cemeteries found that people who survived the initial wave actually lived significantly longer and were healthier than those who lived before the epidemic struck. If you were strong enough to survive the year 1348, you were likely strong enough to live to a ripe old age, fundamentally altering the demographics of the world for generations. You might think the elite was safer, but the plague was a brutal equalizer. It had no respect for rank. A crown offered no protection against the bite of a flea. King Alfonso XI of Castile, a powerful monarch known as the Avenger, died in his army camp in 1350, one of the few reigning kings to be killed directly by the pestilence. Princess Joan of England, the beloved daughter of King Edward III, was traveling to Spain to marry a prince when she was caught by the plague in Bordeaux and perished. Yet some royal lines showed uncanny resilience. While the plague returned more than 20 times over the following centuries, certain families seemed to weather every storm. Scientists now believe these survivors were much more likely to carry specific gene variants, like ERAP2, which changed how their immune systems recognized the pathogen. Macrophages in these survivors were far more effective at hunting down and killing the Yersinia pestis bacteria. This wasn't just luck. It was an evolutionary leap, happening in real time, in the bloodlines of both the peasant and the king. As the plague wiped out up to 60% of the population, the old feudal world was shattered. Before 1400, surnames were rare, mostly reserved for the wealthy to show off their lineage. But in the wake of the Purge, surnames became a necessity as survivors stepped into the void left by the dead. If your last name is Taylor, you likely descend from a trade that saw a massive boom in wealth as survivors signaled their status with extravagant clothing. If your name is Franklin, your ancestors were likely free landholders who seized vacant property and land left behind by perished families. Even common names like Turner, Potter, or Smith became fixed in place during this era as clerks rushed to record the survivors who were now earning higher wages due to the labor shortage. Your name is not just an identifier, it is a direct record of the day your ancestor rose from the ashes of the old world. The next group survived, not through genetics or geography, but through a deliberate behavioral response nobody else was implementing at the time. Some families survived because someone in their household made a specific decision that nobody around them understood. But that happened to be exactly right. Isolation, we call it quarantine today. The word comes from the Italian quarantina, 40 days. The period Venetian authorities eventually mandated for ships arriving from infected ports. Venice was one of the first cities to implement systematic isolation. And Venice's survival rate, while still catastrophic, was measurably better than cities that implemented no such protocols. The Venetian merchant families surviving the Black Death, in highest numbers, were families whose trading networks gave them the earliest information about the plague's movement, and who used that information to remove their households from the highest-risk areas before the worst infection arrived. The Venetian merchants' surnames appearing continuously across the Black Death period, Grimani, Mocenigo, Barbarigo, Contarini, are families that survived through wealth, information access, and the decision to act on that information decisively. These families did not simply survive, they dominated Venetian politics and commerce for the next 2 centuries. Because when 60% of your competition is dead, a family that stayed intact has an extraordinary structural advantage in whatever world gets rebuilt afterward. This is where the story takes a dark, modern turn. The exact same genetic mutations that helped your ancestors survive the Black Death are still present in many people today. A pioneering study published in the journal Nature found that these survival genes gave your ancestors a 40% better chance of living through the plague. But evolution is rarely a free gift. The variant that allowed your ancestors' immune system to hyperreact and kill the plague 600 years ago is now linked to a significant increase in autoimmune diseases today. If you suffer from Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, or lupus, you may be feeling the biological echo of a 14th century battlefield. You are the descendant of a biological elite, the ones who were too strong for the Black Death to kill. But that ancient strength has become a modern burden. Think about the billions of people who never existed because their potential ancestors died in 1348. Entire dynasties, languages, and cultures were simply erased from the timeline. But you are here. You are the result of a lineage that weathered the greatest biological storm in human history. Another mysterious mutation, CCR532, is found in about 10% of Northern Europeans. While some scientists debate its origins, many believe it was selected during centuries of plague and smallpox outbreaks. Remarkably, this mutation today provides natural resistance to HIV. Your blood is a library of ancient victories and survival strategies. Every time you recover from a common illness, you are witnessing the resilience of a bloodline that refused to die out in the darkness of 1348. Subscribe. See ya.